What if the way you teach and care for young children could change the world? Welcome to Reimagine Childhood, brought to you by the Early Childhood Christian Network, helping you grow as an educator, leader, and follower of Jesus. Early childhood is a sacred season where hearts are shaped, faith begins to grow, and lifelong learning takes root. We believe teaching young children is more than a job, it's a calling. That's why each episode is filled with practical strategies, real stories, and faith-based encouragement to help you create joyful, meaningful learning experiences in your classroom and beyond. Let's reimagine what's possible in early childhood together. I'm your host, Monica Healer, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm really excited about today's conversation. I'm chatting with Libby Wright about multilingual children in our early childhood classrooms. Libby is an education professional with several years of classroom teaching experience dedicated to fostering community between teachers, parents, and students from different backgrounds. Libby holds a degree in education from the University of Oklahoma. I love that God is bringing the nations to us in our early learning programs. So many of you encounter families and students whose primary language is not English. This can present challenges in the classroom some days, but Libby and I are talking about some really practical strategies to help you feel confident as you lead in your classroom. Remember, in early childhood, all children are actually English language learners. They're all still developing their language skills. Let's jump into this fun conversation with Libby Wright. Libby, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Monica. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, I'm excited about our topic today. I think this is relevant at any point in the year. It's relevant every year. And honestly, it's personally relevant to me. So I am excited to talk about multilingual learners. I don't know the right terminology, but yes, things that are coming into our programs and they don't speak English. That can be such a challenge for young children, especially who, let's just be honest, they're barely learning to speak English, any of them, with by speaking home or not.
Everybody's language learning.
Developing. So everybody technically is a language learner, but there is a unique challenge being an English-speaking teacher who is then expected to communicate with children speaking multiple different languages at home. I'm excited to talk about what a gift diversity of language actually is for us as a society, but especially in our classrooms. Will you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, language diversity benefits the early childhood classroom in multiple ways: social, cognitive, and educational.
Yeah.
Rather than being a barrier, having children from different language backgrounds can create a richer, more inclusive, and developmentally supportive learning environment. There's a cognitive development boost. Exposure to multiple languages helps young children better develop executive functioning skills, attention control, working memory, problem solving. Multilingual environments encourage mental flexibility and critical thinking as children are learning to make connections across language and cultural context. So that's just one benefit. Others are enhanced communication and language skills. Children in language diverse classrooms are more likely to develop stronger meta-linguistic awareness, just understanding of how language works in general, being more open to learning new languages or dialects, and practicing listening skills as they encounter different sounds, accents, and communication styles. It's helping them develop cultural awareness and empathy. Language diversity introduces children to multiple cultures, promoting respect for differences, inclusion and tolerance, empathy for peers who may be learning the dominant classroom language, English, just laying the foundation for social emotional development and global citizenship.
Yeah.
Another one is stronger peer relationships and collaboration. When classrooms are celebrating language diversity, children feel valued for who they are, which is really important in learning any language. Children from different backgrounds often find common ground through play and collaborative activities, even if they don't share a native language. Yeah.
So much goodness. I see that you've done plenty of research on this. When you look at it, it can be easy to walk into a classroom and go, oh my goodness, these children don't understand a thing I'm saying. How are they ever going to learn anything? The reality is, which we say this a lot at ECCN, children learn a whole lot more by their experiences than by our adult instruction. It's not so much that they're learning by an adult telling them something as they're learning every moment of every day by the experiences that they're having. Being surrounded by children who might speak different languages, different dialects than you speak is beneficial for brain development. It's beneficial for social emotional development. It's beneficial for relational, like literally everything. It's actually really beneficial. I listened to a podcast earlier this week where they talked about how biblically in the Bible, God created languages at the Tower of Babel when his people were not obeying. He goes, okay, you won't do what I say. Boom, now you all have different languages. Go spread out and fill the world like I told you to. Now you have to because you all have different languages. It just made me go, languages were created by God. Why would we try to limit everyone into this tunnel of English? And
Yes.
hear me just say this. I recognize that we live in the United States and that our primary dominant language is English. It is important for children to learn the dominant language, but I don't think we can underestimate the importance of children speaking multiple languages. That actually is really beneficial to our society and to child development.
I agree.
You know,
I agree.
Let's talk about the classroom, though. Teachers can worry that encouraging families to speak their home language, so a non-English language at home, might slow down the English language in the classroom. Can you talk about some of the research about children speaking a home language at home, learning English at school, and how those actually work together rather than counteract?
Research shows that children's language and literacy skills in their home language actually support their English skills. Two, optimal language development occurs when multilingual learners have opportunities to use both languages. By nurturing both languages, we're not only helping children learn English, but also enriching their overall cognitive abilities. When learners add a new language instead of replacing the home language, which was previously thought to be best, they're unlocking their existing knowledge and expressing it more effectively in the second language. Think of it like building on a foundation. So if a child is already familiar with certain concepts in their native language, they can transfer that understanding to English. Research shows comprehension and reasoning skills will transfer from one language to another. It's actually interesting. This language specialist, his name is Jim Cummins. He's still active today. In the early 80s, he was hypothesizing this theory about language, and it was deemed to be too simplistic. But over the years, it's been determined that this is actually correct. It is like this. So here's a good example. If a child understands the concept of apple in their own language, and they've seen an apple before, all they have to do is acquire the label for that term in English. The concept of apple, they know it. They just need the label. It's far more difficult to acquire both the label and the concept in isolation.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
So a lot of this is, I think, more intuitive than people realize.
We're saying, hey, teacher, the parents don't have to speak English at home in order for their child to be successful in your English-speaking classroom.
That's right. And actually, it has been shown that with additive bilingualism, Jim Cummins says the most important thing that you can do is encourage parents to continue speaking the home language at home. Ask them about their day in the home language. It's going to take more time for older kids, but that's what we are moving toward, additive bilingualism instead of subtractive, which is definitely a shift in theory.
I don't know if it's a shift in theory as much as practice, because I think our practice is, if y'all will all just speak English, then this will be easier.
Okay,
but what you're saying is research says if these children actually continue speaking their home language, if the parents just do the parenting thing, right? Read books in your home language, teach concepts, offer experiences in your home language, that the concept solidifies in the brain so that when they come to school, then they're really just adjusting the label a little bit, which the learning is happening. The label is the only thing that's being added. It makes learning easier if parents keep speaking the home language and are doing the interaction. Like, we want the parents to interact with their kids at home. That's the main thing. Interact with kids at home. So kids solidified the concepts, which whatever that is. Apple, in your example, a concept of even sitting in a chair, like the things we need them to know. Once they get the concept down, we can adjust that label. The language label is easier to adjust than teaching the concept and teaching the label.
That's exactly right. And I'm talking to a few teachers this summer. Something that they have done with parents is give them the concepts that you're going to be talking about in the preschool classroom ahead of time. So say, hey, and not after, but before, say, hey, next week this is honestly good to do. We talked about language learning in general, monolingual learners, multilingual learners, whoever, say, hey, we're going to talk about weather. Will you talk to them about weather in your native language? Get that activating prior knowledge. They can do that in our native language. They know what the rain is, right? And so you can talk about what you wear when it's raining, what we use when it's raining. If they're talking about that in a native language, that's going to help bring that concept to the forefront for them when you start talking about it as a teacher in the classroom. People have found that to be pretty effective and honestly just great teaching practice in general. And that's why I feel like a lot of these are just good teaching practices in general.
Okay, talk to me about what a language-rich environment looks like.
Yes. Okay, so a language-rich environment we're going to look at it from a few different ways. One of the very first things that you can do, just simple and practical things that you can do, is you learn a few key words or phrases in their language. And that would even be just a name for a caregiver. Teachers have noted that it's more effective if you can tell an upset child, Mama is coming soon. But knowing the name that they know can be more soothing to a child who is upset. So learn what they call their caregivers. You could learn basic greetings and common classroom commands, just like you spoke about with even just sit down. Depending on your kid, you can ask a parent at drop off or pick up, can they send you a little voice note of them saying the word in their native language, the command, sit down, or whatever it is. And praise words in the child's language too. This is depending on how many languages you have in the classroom, right? It's going to be discernment. You talk to some teachers who they've got 6 different languages in the classroom. That's going to take some time, some things to do. And so then you would use those words during transitions and routines and connection moments. Hello, thank you, good job. Even a few words, you don't have to do a ton. You are not expected to learn every single language of the children that you teach, but just a few words can show respect and help build trust. So that is one way to build a language-rich environment where you are communicating with the child. You can also use visual supports, always a great idea in the early childhood education setting. So posting pictures with words for routines, schedules, and classroom expectations. Labeling items in multiple languages like English and Spanish or Chinese, Mandarin. Using gestures, facial expressions, body language to reinforce understanding. Visuals are going to help all kids and not just language learners. And I've had a few questions of even if the kids can't read, are we doing this? And the answer is yes. If the kids can't read, we're still providing them with this language-rich environment. I think it's important to note the difference between receptive language and expressive. Their receptive language develops much faster than their ability to express what they are thinking. Even if they aren't expressing it, they are still taking it in. They are still receptive of that. And that's why we want to provide that. You could also create a welcoming multilingual environment by displaying children's names in their home language. Like on their cubbies, you could put all the kids in however many languages you have, or however you would do that best in your classroom, including books, songs, signs in the languages spoken by children. You can decorate with cultural items, flags, or have family photos from diverse backgrounds. All children feel seen and valued when their identity is reflected in this space. Something that my daughter's preschool does that I love is they have every family submit a family photo. It's registration, not something you have to do in the first few days of school, but every spring when you register, that's just something that you turn in with your family packet. And then that way the photo is already up in the classroom. So when your kids come in who haven't had any exposure to this culture, at least they're seeing familiar faces on the wall. That's huge.
Love that.
Small thing.
I love the idea of decorating with cultural items. Most families that speak a different language are often very willing to donate things to your classroom so that their culture can be displayed. I would recommend to teachers, don't feel like you need to go out looking for a lot of things. Families typically are excited to provide things for you. So even asking a family, hey, could you provide a book in whatever, Arabic or in Mandarin or whatever languages you have. I know we have lots of them. Or in Spanish, could you provide one of your child's favorite books or something like that that you can have in the classroom? Most cultures appreciate that care and attention so much that we would even take the time to ask for those things. And it goes a long way in building a relationship with the family in those moments where expressive language might be different, or even receptive language with the child where they're not understanding what you're trying to get them to do. It's easier to have the conversations if the parents feel like you care about their culture, their language, what they care about, and their kid.
I agree. Teachers have reported back. It is, and research shows, honestly, that invite the families in. You invite the families in because in certain cultures, it is seen as disrespectful to go into the school where teachers are It's seen as interfering. It's seen as we're not going to come to you because this is your area of expertise. And so most important conversation with parents is the baseline of we want you here and here is why. When we're talking, I noted what you said about parents wanting to donate books. If you have books in your classroom library about colors or shapes, you can have a family volunteer use sticky notes and go in and label the book that you already have and make it a dual language book. That's an option.
Great idea.
Then you're not always buying new materials, you're not always buying new supplies, and say you may be limited, then you're doing both. You're inviting the parents in, you're inviting the families in, you need their help, and this is why.
Yeah.
And so that's another good option that, if you're with the resources that you already have. And so you can also ask families for songs, stories, cultural traditions they would like to share. You can invite them in to do these things in the classroom or to record short videos or send voice notes reading a book in their favorite language.
Love that.
So you can do a dual read aloud where you're reading aloud a book. You can do it with a dual language book or whatever you have, and then have a family member who's also just recorded it and sent it to you, even if they can't come in. But there's a couple of different ways to do that. And then you can always use translation apps to communicate with families like Talking Points or Google Translate. You can invite children to tell stories in their home language. Even if you don't understand, they can still bring it in that way and help them gain ownership of the classroom. There's this theory of the affective filter, which is that psychologically, it's just a psychological filter of the factors that affect your ability to learn a language. And that could even be factors such as how you're feeling about language learning. Are you feeling bold or shy? If you're feeling shy, you're more inhibited and not necessarily going to feel like you can do well. And so this is why it's important that first you've got to build that rapport, trust, so that language can develop. The more kids feel involved in the classroom and ownership of the classroom, that affective filter is going to lower. And then that's actually going to help their ability to learn English.
Yeah.
The more comfortable they feel.
I think we underestimate how complex it is, but also how simple it is. There's crazy complex things happening in our brains as we're doing this. We just need to show people common respect and care and interest.
Yeah.
It's not anything hard. It's crazy complex in what's happening in your brain.
It is much more intuitive than you would think. These are just the research-based answers. This supports exactly what most teachers are already doing in their classroom by building that connection and by building that respect. Most teachers you find you're already doing that. And so that the first step is already done.
Is there anything else in language-rich environment that we haven't covered?
Yes. Make sure you're using repetition and routine in that language-rich environment, using consistent, predictable language, learning daily routines, repeating keywords and phrases with slow, clear speech. I always have to work on the slowing down part myself.
I'm a fast talker. Have to make anything possible.
Same. Using songs or chants to reinforce daily transitions and vocabulary. That's language rich too. The speaking of language. Supporting language through play, joining the children in pretend play and describing what they're doing. You're cooking soup. Encouraging peer interaction, even if children don't speak the same language. Play is a universal language. And there are not a lot of studies honestly done around language development and play. But one that I found is really interesting because it's just the intuitive aspect of kids don't know how to even ask each other how to play. And the most effective thing they can have is a teacher just modeling that for them.
Yes.
It's just how do you ask? Give them words.
And that to me is one of those, like in an early childhood classroom, hopefully you're doing that anyway, because your English language speakers in the home are still English language learners in your class. I'm interrupting this episode briefly to tell you about another amazing opportunity to get better equipped for the role that you play in early childhood. Today, I want to tell you about our online, on-demand, self-paced professional development and training courses. You can choose from almost 50 different courses, all provided from a faith perspective. Each course includes downloadable resources and note sheets, engaging video content, and a quick quiz to earn a certificate of completion. Get it done at your own pace in moments that work for you, even in your pajamas if you want to. Check out the full offering at earlychildhoodchristiannetwork.com/course-catalog, or just click courses on our website. There's even a popular sample course on behavior management available for free, so you can get a feel for the way each course operates. We can't wait to connect with you inside our course library. Now, let's finish up today's episode. Early childhood teachers often use the words, use your words. And my comeback to that always is they don't have the words yet. You teach them the words. That is universal in every preschool classroom. They do not have the words. Quit saying use your words. They don't know what words you model for them. This is how you ask someone to play in English. If you can figure out some of that language in a home language, awesome. But if you can't, modeling it in English is beneficial.
Absolutely. Just modeling without pressure. Just saying it. I'm pouring milk into the cup. Just no pressure. Simple descriptive language. Avoiding
to repeat it. We're not saying I'm pouring milk into a cup.
Just giving them time to observe, to listen, respond at their own.
But there's no actual pressure to learn the language per se. We're offering experiences, modeling appropriate language around it and action around it. And then they pick it up because that's what kids do. They absorb what you are doing, what you're showing them, and what.
Yeah, my dad says some things are caught, not taught.
Yeah. In early childhood, pretty much everything is caught. Like you can catch germs and bugs, and you can also catch all your learning.
Absolutely.
All caught. Everything in early childhood is caught. There is not nearly as much taught via instruction as you like to think.
So true.
I feel like we've shared a lot of, it's like you said though, so much of what you shared is what we already do. Hopefully we're already doing predictable chants for transitions, but now you also know it's beneficial for multi-language learners.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I have found talking with teachers a lot is when I have said these are the research-based strategies. How many of you are doing them? And most are. And this is just research backed of why it's supporting everybody, all the learners in your environment.
But boy, it's affirming to go, oh, you know what? I actually am doing okay at this.
You're much better than you think you are.
Is there a favorite strategy that helps children feel included that we haven't talked about yet?
Oh, yes. To make sure that you're really utilizing snack time as a time to socially share and to also share across cultures. You're already at the table together, so you can talk about the different foods each child's enjoying. Ask them to name foods in their home language, even if it's both eating apples. Encourage them to chat with each other about their food choices. You can also have family volunteers bring in a favorite snack from their home culture to introduce to the class and share. My daughter's preschool class has done that, and she has loved it. You're making the kids feel included. You're working on language skills because that spontaneous social interaction is just as important to develop as that academic.
I love that. It just exposes kids to different foods that they might not try.
It's hitting all of the things, and you're not having to add it into an extra chunk of your day. It's how do you take the time that you already have and use it wisely?
Having families provide snacks or treats or whatever to your classroom, to me, that's one of those win-wins for every parent. I think we've all gone through the stage with our children where all they will eat is like mac and cheese and chicken nuggets. And you're like, come on, I need you to branch out. And to do it in this way where it's my friend's favorite treat, like, of course I want to try it.
Absolutely. They're way more likely to try something in that environment.
I love that. I think we've talked about some multilingual classrooms are probably multicultural classrooms. But give me a couple more tips. Like, how can teachers approach these differences with curiosity?
Okay, so you want to think curiosity versus judgment. So the Texas Infant, Toddler, and 3-year-old Learning Guidelines remind us the first step in honoring another person's culture is to welcome their values and traditions with authentic interest and openness. When we do this, we're creating a nurturing environment for everyone and fostering a sense of belonging for the children and families with which we engage. So you want to think curiosity over judgment. So instead of thinking this is strange, try to think this is different. I wonder why. So each child and family as someone who can teach you something new. Avoid assumptions that are based on race, language, or appearance.
Yeah.
Ask open-ended questions and be open to being gently corrected or retaught. Like the idea is to be thinking, I'm here to learn with and from you. Model language. Is that something your family does? Or, wow, that's different from what I do. Can you show me? So we're using conflicts and misunderstandings as chances to teach empathy and not shame. We're all learning about each other.
I love that. In my experience in the school where I used to be, we would have families from different cultures come, and sometimes clothing is different. Sometimes obviously food is often very different. And rather than, you know how children are too, they're just going to be honest. So if something smells funny to them, they're wrinkling up their nose and going, ew, that stinks. Or using that sort of language. For us as the adult, even if it doesn't smell great to you, can you say things like, wow, we all get to eat different foods. That smells different than what I eat at my house, or that smells interesting rather than you disgusted language. Not because that's what they think. And way to go for being honest. But for us to then model curiosity. Why do you like that? What does that taste like? Did your mommy make that for you? My mommy makes my snack too. Like those sorts of things where we can build connectedness as well as expressing interest. And then one thing that I know my staff often encountered was there are several cultures, one in particular, who will put like I don't want to use the wrong terminology, so y'all forgive my lack of literally my ignorance here, but it's like a piece of jewelry around the waist that can sometimes get in the way of diaper changes. And so to have that conversation with parents before you just take it off, which here's a tip, don't take it off. Talk, go, can you tell me about this? What's the significance of this? And then you can figure out how to work around it in a diaper change. And that's just one example. Ask the questions rather than just going, whoa, we can't do this. Most of the time, there's not a licensing rule against it. It's us saying this is inconvenient for us. And so I would say approach those conversations with interest and curiosity, just like you said, rather than going, we can't do this. Hey, what's the significance of this? What do we need to do with this? I'm not going to say why that jewelry is there because I don't want to say it wrong, but approach things with interest. I think it's a safety thing. Like it's one of their religious, like keeping their child safe.
Yeah, a religious protection, sure.
And while in our Christian faith, we don't believe that a piece of jewelry will keep you safe, we do believe that Jesus will keep us safe. And so can we link those two together, that we are going to do
still
to keep
honor
you safe and honor your culture that says you need to be wearing this piece of jewelry for that safety protection on your child.
Especially as an additional caregiver to their child, to show that you can honor their beliefs. And I've heard teachers also talking about you can have within the same classroom a student whose family's culture encourages them to be very independent and to feed themselves early. And then in the same class, you can have a student who being hand-fed, literally hand-fed by a grandparent or a parent is a sign of love.
Yeah.
And it is an act of love, and honestly would be even done for an adult. You would find an adult being fed by another adult as an act of love. Here, let me put this food in your mouth. It is a sign of nurturing. It is a sign of love. Not familiar to me, as I am from Oklahoma. This is not personally my culture, but I do find it fascinating to learn about how other people raise their children and choose to rear their children, and to look at the differences and honor those differences instead of immediately jumping to they don't think their kid can feed themselves. It is an act of love.
And at the same time, that doesn't mean you need to feed these children. It means you need to communicate with parents. Hey, in our classroom with 14 children, I will not be able to feed your child at lunch. This is what's expected in the class. It's okay to still have expectations in the classroom while honoring a parent's parenting technique or their culture. You can honor the parent and still have expectations in your classroom. Just communicate that in a way that's loving and kind rather than, I can't believe you won't let your kid feed themselves.
Exactly. A very important distinction.
Talk to me about some practical ways we can partner with parents to support language development.
So we've talked about starting with relationship and trust, getting to know the cultural values around communication, but also it's really important to get to know the goals they have for their child too. Ask them what goals they have for their kids, using warm, respectful communication, letting parents know that their home language is an asset and not a barrier. You could start by asking what languages are spoken at home and how they communicate with their child during daily routines. You can, again, encouraging the home language use, even just speaking, reading, singing in home language. That's the best thing they can do to support overall language and literacy development. Share the idea of language transfer, the concepts, the vocabulary, the grammar skills, they will all transfer between languages. You can provide handouts or short videos explaining that in family-friendly language for them too. It's very important that they understand the why. Sending home language-rich activities, like offering them simple everyday activities that they can do in any language, like storytelling at bedtime, singing favorite songs or nursery rhymes, talking during meals and walks, asking children to describe their drawings and retell a story. Again, things that you're already doing in the classroom, share that with parents and explain to them that their home language is fantastic. Please keep developing that. You can invite them into the classroom like we discussed and celebrate and affirm family cultures create classroom activities that honor multilingualism, like languages we speak wall or cultural show and tell, just being clear that you value each child's language and identity.
I think something that can become a challenge is parent communication. If the parent is not a native English speaker or struggles in communicating in English, we've got to figure out how best to communicate with parents. And sometimes that is face-to-face where you can do body language and all the motions and all the things to try to understand. Sometimes it means we need to bring in an interpreter if you can. A lot of times they have a friend who speaks great English and who's willing to interpret for them if you need to have a conference with a parent. I've also found that sometimes great communication happens via written communications where they can Google Translate into their language, then respond back to you and translate back to English in a response. Sometimes that's a bit of trial and error. You just have to figure out what works best for different sets of parents. Some parents speak perfect English but choose to speak a different language at home, which is great. And some parents also struggle with English themselves. That makes those conversations more difficult. But it's the mindset, right? We're valuing their language and culture. We're trying to build a relationship. We're curious about them and want to communicate with them rather than just being like, if you only spoke English, then we could make this work.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's reaching out to invite in. I think it's also worth asking parents, what do they prefer? Are they already on Facebook in a Facebook group? What are they already using? And these are ways that you can meet them where they are as well. And also, I think going through local colleges, community resources,
Yep.
using those to help speak with families too.
Okay, so if a teacher's listening today and is feeling a little bit overwhelmed or unsure, what's one step?
Okay, so one step I would say if they are completely unprepared in their classroom, to just start by labeling the everyday objects with words in both languages if kids can't read yet. If you're looking around at your classroom and thinking, how do I start there? That's the very first thing I would do. Make sure the labels are at eye level for kids.
Yeah.
So that they can see too. Dual language learners feel recognized and secure when their home language is visible in their daily environment, even if they're not speaking yet. If it is just, I can't communicate with this child, and that is the biggest stress, which you hear too.
Yeah.
I would also suggest learning familiar terms to the child, like nap, bottle, diaper, blanket, just starting there, reaching out to them first. That's what teachers have said is the most helpful. And I've honestly run into teachers who have said they have students who have zero English at all. And the most effective thing they have done is just having visual cards laminated on a key ring. Just visual so that a child can point and show. Very simple, easy things to implement that would help you communicate.
And I hope what our episode has done for a teacher who might have been overwhelmed is to say a lot of what you're doing is excellent. Just doing it and trust that the language will develop. You're not going to teach the language will develop. And that shift in mindset as well is you don't need to teach things. They will develop as you provide experiences. I love that.
I definitely agree.
So last question on every episode. Our podcast is called Reimagine Childhood, and I would love to hear from you, Libby. If you could reimagine something about our current approach to early childhood, what would you reimagine?
I just love the new direction of shifting the mindset of language in general as an asset and not a barrier. I wish that everyone would move away from the idea that kids have to catch up in English first, and just emphasizing the additive bilingualism, keeping that home language while learning a new one. I think that is going to help all of our kids. In the early childhood classroom, everybody's a language learner. So most of the things they're doing more effective than you would think.
I love the terminology, additive bilingualism. That's a new term for me. The picture of that really is that we are adding to what they already know, adding to what they already experience. That's in every facet of early childhood, honestly, not just language. But to apply it to this idea, you don't have to be proficient in English in order to be successful in an early childhood classroom.
Absolutely. And as a teacher, like we talked about, you don't have to learn every single language. You just have to make sure kids are maintaining their home language while you are providing that exposure to English.
Yeah. So good. Libby, this was so enlightening for me. I'm good.
Good. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me.
Goodness, I loved that conversation. One thing that really resonated with me was that we should learn a few simple terms in each child's home language. Libby mentioned words like greetings, simple commands, and at one point she said, learn the terminology of the main caregiver's name. That blew me away and reminded me that not all children call their mommy, mommy. So Think about it. If I have no concept for mommy's coming as something comforting, you might as well have said a wild and crazy monkey is coming to get you. Just knowing that the child calls their mommy ama or more could help in comforting a child whose native language is not English. What a powerful thing to learn for young children. Listen, we shared a whole bunch of tips today. That can feel overwhelming. So pick one thing. Pick one thing that you want to start with when you go back to your classroom, and then trust your intuition. What you're doing every day in your classroom is actually building language for kids who speak English at home and for kids who speak some other language at home. You're already doing a great job. Trust that. One last thing I want to leave you with. Having bilingual children in your classroom can definitely be a challenge, but what an adventure God has given us to participate in. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that languages are actually a God-given part of our society. He had to bust up our common language so that we would obey his command way back in the book of Genesis to multiply and fill the earth rather than trying to become our own God, which is what the people were doing when they were trying to build the tower at Babel to make a name for themselves. But honestly, throughout biblical history and even today, God is slowly but surely bringing all of the earth's population back into unity under the gospel. At Pentecost in the book of Acts, think about it, everyone in attendance actually heard the gospel in their own language. That's a picture of the unity of God that comes from the gospel. So, while we speak different languages here every day, remember that the language of the gospel, the language of love, the language of care that we get through the beauty of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, that's unifying for all people, for all time. Thanks for spending time with us today on Reimagine Childhood. We hope you walk away with a fresh idea, a little encouragement, and a big reminder that your work with young children truly changes lives. If this episode was helpful, would you take a moment to subscribe, rate the show in whichever app you listen, and then share this episode with someone who might benefit? It helps us reach more teachers and caregivers who are shaping the next generation for Jesus. Stay connected with us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and our website at earlychildhoodchristiannetwork.com. Until next time, keep nurturing wonder, faith, and joy in the children God has placed in your care.